What is up, my brothers from another mother? Without a question of a doubt, the person that I get most requested to do a interview on or topic on is Jordan B. Peterson. He's actually quite local to me because he's also in Toronto. So we're not doing that today. What I've done instead is I've taken a look at a lot of the videos that a lot of my viewers and subscribers have sent me and asked me to either comment on or provide feedback on. And I've had some reservations to do that for some time now. So what I've done today is I've arranged a conversation with Sean Smith, who is a author and has a clinical practice in dealing with relationships breaking down and trying to help the couples reconcile their differences. So the reason why I've put this together now is there's two things that I've noticed in watching Jordan Peterson's videos. First thing I should mention is he has a uncanny, he has been made world famous by YouTube, basically by publishing lectures and putting stuff on the internet. His biblical series will fill larger stadiums than what a priest could put into a church on a Sunday. So he has quite the audience and quite the attraction and draw. A lot of my guys that are watching my stuff are often stuck in areas in their life, becoming a better version with themselves, and often it's understanding female nature and the dynamics between men and women, which is the things that I usually tend to focus the most on. So when I'm watching the videos and the links that have been sent to me, I'm using that critical lens, that critical eye, and just seeing what kind of advice he's giving. And what I started to realize watching a lot of the links that were given is, one, he married his one-itis, which we'll talk about in this video, and two, he tends to give a lot of talking points off about the notion of negotiating in the relationship. And more specifically, what I'm talking about is negotiating desire. The thing about Jordan Peterson is he has a fairly significant advantage over other men out there. And I know a lot of guys try to replicate his behavior and the stuff that he talks about. I'll make my bed, I'll stand up straight, I'll do all the things that he says. Yes, yes, yes. But here's the thing. Over the last few years, because of what has happened over time with YouTube and the amount of attention he's gotten, even the recent interview with Kathy Newman, he's untouchable. He is absolutely world-class at what he does. He's a master at that craft of debating topics, and he also negotiates them too quite well. But he's been in a relationship with the same woman his entire life, and I don't believe that a lot of the stuff that he's come across in his practice deals specifically with intergender relationships and uncovering the layers of female nature. So what I want to talk about today, I'm going to show you in a moment. We're going to be talking about his one-itis, him marrying his one-itis, and how he goes on about negotiating desire. The reason why I'm mentioning the fact that he's world-class at what he does is it has a distinct advantage on the sexual marketplace. And it doesn't matter if you're married or single. It actually matters more if you're married. That you are absolutely world-class at what you do. And he demonstrates that day in and day out on YouTube, doing lectures, getting interviews on BBC4. He's been on big podcasts. So his spouse, his wife, looks at him with rose-colored lenses. She's definitely looking at a high-value man. There's a few things that he misses, though, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Thanks for checking out this intro. I hope you enjoy this. Leave a comment below. And if there's anybody else that you'd recommend me have a chat with, let me know. Talk to you guys later. All right, welcome, my brothers from another mother. I'm on with Sean Smith again, and today we're going to be talking about Jordan B. Peterson and a lot of the advice that he gives out to guys, which I think is actually top shelf. But there's an area that I question, and there's some stuff that I sent over to Sean about a week ago that I want to talk to him about on this video. And that has to deal with intergender relationships and, of course, dealing with women. Just to kind of give you a quick background and reminder, Sean is the author of The Tactical Guide to Women. It's one of the books that I've recommended to a lot of my viewers quite often. I've got amazing feedback. So if you're looking to manage risk in dating and marriage, this is definitely a must-read for all men. Sean, so what I'll do is I'm going to do a quick intro on one of the videos, because what I'll do is I'll link in the below description so everybody can see the videos that I'm talking about in case they want to review them and throw some comments there. But the first one, he talks about his how he met his wife, which kind of ties into the notion of the clause or the concept of one-itis that Rollo Tomassi brings up in The Rational Male. He fell in love with her at age 7. She was a girl across the street, kind of like the girl next door sort of story. Jordan told his father that he was going to marry her around the same age. At the age of 13, he was delivering the paper to her house, and she was talking about being a feminist. And Tammy, which is his wife's name, mentioned that she needed to find some wimp to marry him, and then looked over to Jordan and said, "Hey, do you want to get married?" I don't think Jordan is the kind of guy that would roll with that. And he talked about later on in that video where he kind of corrected her and said, look, if we're going to get married, you're taking my last name. We're not playing these games. He's a firstborn. So that's kind of typical with that. Now, Rollo says in his work that at some point in a one-itis relationship, one participant will establish dominance based on the powerlessness that this one-itis necessitates. There is no greater agency for a woman than to know beyond a doubt that she's the only source of a man's need for sex and intimacy. So I just wanted to get your feedback on that component.
Yeah, I guess the question that I struggled with a bit there is how do you reconcile Rollo Tomasi's warning against one-itis, which I agree with completely, and Jordan Peterson's argument that there is tremendous value in a long-term commitment with somebody and building something. He's talked about as part of his videos that you sent me, the value that he gets from having children and grandchildren. And by the way, I would add, if you want to know what you're made of, and you want to know what needs to be fixed within yourself, raise a child. I don't mean procreate, I mean commit yourself to raising a child, and you will find out where your weak points are. But how do you reconcile these two, this red pill view and this blue pill view? And I think that it's nice when you find two ideas that you agree with that seem to collide, because then you get to try to look for the unifying principle. And I think the unifying principle here is one of position and how you're approaching this situation. So if you forget about relationships and pretend that you have a dream job, perfect people, perfect schedule, perfect money, perfect everything, you don't want to lose this job. You don't want to walk around that job with a chip on your shoulder saying, reminding people, hey, I could do better. This isn't my only option, because that's going to lead to failure. That's going to create doubt amongst the people around you and your colleagues, even though it's true. You know that you need to know that you will be okay if you lose this job. So you take that fact and you tuck it away in the back of your head, because you don't want to make the opposite error, which is to say that my world would fall apart if I lost this singular point of meeting, because that's going to create hesitancy, and that's going to put you in a tremendous position of weakness. So the way to approach that is to use that old wisdom that from recovery circles. You behave as if, which is not to say that you behave as if this is your only option, but you behave as if you behave in accordance with the outcome that you want, consistent with the outcome that you want. So you would say, with this job, I'm going to behave as if this really matters to me. I'm going to master the art and the science of this career, and I'm going to take charge and I'm going to control it. And not in any kind of overbearing way, but I'm going to control my destiny here. And I think you can take that same kind of position argument and apply it to relationships. If you intend to have kids and a family, and you want to have that as part of your life, like Jordan Peterson does, I do, a lot of guys do, that you would take that same approach and you would master the art and science of being in that relationship. And let's come back to the negotiating piece in a minute. But I think the commonality between Rollo Tomasi's red pill position and Jordan Peterson's blue pill position is that both of these guys are coming from a position of tremendous personal strength. Both of these guys would be resourceful and resilient in any situation that you put them in, and neither one of them arrived at their situation by accident.
Sorry, I got to turn that back on. So you deal with couples dealing with marriage counseling, whether they're dating, they want the relationship to work out, or they're trying to work on their own stuff. Like, you've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot more hands-on experience than I guess the practical stuff that Rollo would write about on his Rational Male blog and in his book. But one of the things that I've noticed, because I talk to a lot of guys that message me, and I even coach them on a platform that I work on as well. And one of the things that comes up quite often is guys get stuck and make incredibly bad decisions. And I think it boils down to the one-itis concept of seeing as I even did a video on it. Like, there is no one. There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's the ones that break your heart, there's the ones that you kiss first, there's the ones that you take your first vacation with, and so on and so forth. But there's no actual one that is the only one that you'll ever have in your lifetime. I mean, I think it's incredibly narcissistic to say with 8 billion people in the world, there's only one person that's actually, your ultimate and perfect fit. So, guys throw up all kinds of mental barriers in their head when it comes to dealing with intergender relationships with women because of the one-itis issue. What's your experience been in your practice with guys that come to you with one-itis, pining over the one that they lost, that they're trying to negotiate desire in? And let me just go down, because the negotiation part I want to get into in just a moment. But this is what it usually breaks down to. So let me just read this excerpt before I throw it back over to you. Usually it breaks down to men seeking some methodology to return his relationship to an earlier state where a previously passionate woman couldn't keep her hands off him. 6 months into a comfortable familiarity and the thrill is gone, but in truth, it's the genuine desire that is gone. It's often at this stage that a man will resort to negotiation. Sometimes this can be as subtle as him progressively doing things for her in the hopes that she'll reciprocate with the same sexual fervor that they used to have. Other times, a married couple may go to marriage counseling to resolve their sex issues and negotiate terms for her sexual compliance. He'll promise to do the dishes and a load of laundry more often in exchange for her feigned sexual interest in him, yet no matter what the terms that are offered, no matter how great an external effort he makes, so deserving of reward, the genuine desire is not there for her. In fact, she feels worse for not having the desire, and such efforts were made for her compliance. Negotiated desire only ever leads to obligated compliance. Real desire is created by her thinking it's something she wants, not something she has to do. So I want to kind of segue into the negotiation stuff in a moment, because there's a couple of very useful points that I want to get into, but I'm kind of bringing this back from negotiation back to the one-itis. How do guys reconcile I think it does a lot of damage. I mean, I've dealt with one-itis in my life before. I talked to a lot of guys that have dealt with it. You've probably seen it, but I just want to hear your perspective from your practice on what kind of tips you could maybe give guys, or, how you see it impact their lives. Go ahead.
Well, with the one-itis and the negotiation, I'll try to set that piece aside because I see them as very much intertwined. But when a guy comes to me and he's in this position of tremendous weakness or in vulnerability, where this is the only woman that he could have, and she holds this tremendous power to dictate the course of his meaning and his happiness, then my first question is always, all right, what's going on with you, mister? Because let's forget about her. Let's pretend she doesn't exist. What's going on in your world that you're in such a position that this one person can make or break you? Because nobody ruins anybody else's life without permission. And if she has that power over you, that tells me that there's some tremendous deficit going on your end. You don't have your money right. You don't have your body right. You don't have your relationships or your career right. Something's going tremendously wrong there.
All right, so let's leave the one-itis bit for the time being. Maybe we'll revisit it in a moment, but I want to talk about negotiating desire and communication. So I was forwarded a ton of videos in the last 6 months from my viewers on the channel with Jordan Peterson's conversations, and there's all kinds of sound bites and snapshots that have gone all over the internet. Like, most people know who he is if they're watching this video by now. One of the things that he mentioned, and these are quotations, so I'm just going to read them. In one video, he was talking about how to mate select. So basically, sorting through the riffraff and the chaff and trying to find the right sort of woman to settle down with. And one of the things that he mentions quite often is the negotiation part. And he says in this component, know somebody well enough so that you know that you can negotiate with them. Another excerpt, you have to consider your life together from the perspective of practicality and economics. From my perspective, I feel like he's not putting enough emphasis on understanding yourself as a man, understanding your masculinity, and understanding women and female nature. Moving on to the other points here, he talked about expanding his self-authoring suite. And I've done this about a year ago. I got a ton of value out of it. So I know some of you guys right now are fuming and you're like, that guy Rich, I got my flak jacket on, don't worry. I really do respect his work, and I've actually gone through the self-authoring suite and I got a ton of value out of it. But he adds that he wants to develop an online program to help people negotiate their relationships. He also goes on to say, discuss the real practical issues of life and determine whether or not you're capable of negotiating that. Says that the most important part that you can tell each other is the truth and be able to negotiate. Now, he's not separating negotiating desire from negotiating differences. So I want to be clear about that. But he's also not being clear that there has to be natural, innate desire between the two of you. And I think he kind of blends all that in when he's dispensing the advice. And I don't know that that's the best advice you can give. What did I put over here? He talks about negotiating who's going to take on that. So he also chats about who's going to take on gender roles in the house. Now, I've seen a number of studies, and I'll hand this off to you in just a moment, but I've seen a number of studies as well, which kind of contradict the idea of, well, I'll do the dishes, honey, if you cut the lawn. And what we've seen in these gender studies is women are incredibly dissatisfied in marriages where he's not doing typical masculine roles like cutting the lawn, changing the oil, swapping out the snow tires for the summer tires, and she's not taking on the typical gender roles of preparing meals, maybe cleaning up the dishes and stuff like that. So he's talking about broadly negotiating who's taken on what roles in the house, but we know from studies that I've read anyway, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that component too, what you've learned from that. So I'm going to stop talking now and throw it back off to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make the same distinction that you make between negotiating and negotiating desire. And Rollo Tomasi's on my mind because I just finished his book, and it's a great book. People should read it. But I agree with both of them again, and so we got to find the unifying principle here. I agree with Jordan Peterson when he says you better find somebody who can negotiate if you're going to try to build something with them, because what it boils down to is what kind of world do you want to create for yourself? Do you want to create a home that is a sanctuary for you, so you walk out of the house every morning and you're rejuvenated and you're ready to take on the world? Or do you want to create an arena that you have to go to every night, and every once in a while you're going to have to do battle over some stupid bullshit like the dishwasher or stupid things? And so when Jordan Peterson's talking about finding someone who can negotiate. Yeah, you better find someone who can work out these little differences. And ideally, you get to the point, excuse me, I'm going to brag for a minute, but my wife and I, we don't negotiate anything. She does most of the stuff and I do most of the stuff. And so together, everything is getting done. We're not talking about anything. We're just acting as a team, and everything gets done. And it's kind of nice. So do you want to create that arena where you have to do battle over stupid stuff, and then you come out and you're already defeated before you even punched in for the day? And when that's the case, you can say goodbye to your highest aspirations. And that might sound dramatic, but how many times can you come out of the house defeated every morning and have that affect your performance in the world before your aspirations get to start to get seriously downgraded? And so I agree with Jordan Peterson. Now, Rollo Tomasi talks about not negotiating. How does he put it? Not negotiating. Help me out here.
Not that you can't negotiate desire. Let me just scroll down here because I put the quote. Real desire is created by her thinking it's something that she wants, not something that she has to do. Negotiated desire only ever leads to obligated compliance and resentment.
Right. And I agree with that 100% also. Rollo Tomasi and I might phrase it a little bit differently because I come at it from a slightly different angle, but I think we arrive at the same place. And if you think about what men and women find sexually attractive in each other, with men, it's pretty straightforward. We can be mad at our woman and still want to have sex with her, right? Those are two completely different things. And one of the things that women don't understand about us is that sometimes that's an attempt to fix the relationship. That doesn't register for them because they see us very differently. Their attraction to us is very much intertwined with their opinion of us. And so what do we know about what women find attractive when they're in the market for something meaningful? I'm not talking about getting laid, because when women try to get laid, they have a different set of sensibilities about what's attractive. But when they're committed to a man, the things that they find attractive, we know, are some pretty basic things. A man who has his life in order, he's resourceful, he's resilient, he's getting things done. That's what's attractive to them. And if that starts to get downgraded in their estimation, then along with it goes the sexual attraction. So I'm sort of repeating what I said earlier, that if you have this one-itis, or alternatively, if things are falling apart and you're sexually and you're feeling desperate about that, you got to ask, all right, why is she no longer attracted to me? What's going on in my world? There's probably something inside of me or something in my world that needs to be addressed. My money, my career, just how I conduct myself.
Got it. So I want to go back to this. Men innately behave differently with deductive reasoning. So men tend to rely on deductive reasoning in the sense that, it's a if-then logic stream. So the code often looks like this, and this is like another clip that I pulled out from an essay that Rollo wrote. I need sex, plus women have the sex that I want, plus query women about their conditions for sex, plus meet the prerequisites for sex equals the sex that I want. And I've talked to a lot of guys about this, and it mirrors that nearly exactly. They do everything from The notion of relationship equity, for one, is one that pops up a lot for guys. It's like, well, I spent 50 grand renovating the bathroom, and I bought the curtains that she wanted, and blah, 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 blah. And I did all these things, and I bought her the car, and I moved to the neighborhood that she wanted, and she still left me, right? Sort of thing. And that concept of the one night is in their head. They just pine over that woman that they just can't seem to get over. And I can't myself seem to get past the point that my intuition's telling me that Jordan Peterson is a brilliant man that he is. And the way, he does, from an academic perspective, he can destroy anybody. I've seen him, take on Kathy Newman on that BBC interview, and it's like she just embarrassed herself, during that conversation. But I still feel like he's not giving the best advice to guys when it comes to making decisions for relationships. Because when I get guys messaging me going, hey, what do you think of this conversation about him giving advice to guys about women and selecting for marriage? I can't think to myself, well, this is a guy that's married his one-itis, the girl across the street that he had a big crush on. And he often talks about negotiating in the relationship and doesn't differentiate the desire part. And I think he's piling the desire into his conversation. So I guess the last part of this that I want to deal with is, what are your thoughts on the advice that he's giving to young men in general about becoming men? He does a lot of the stand up, make your bed, put your shoulders back, be a man, come on, buckaroo sort of thing. But I haven't heard him really talk a lot about, the intimate details of understanding intergender dynamics, female nature, he talks a lot about understanding oneself. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I agree with you that this formula that men use is the wrong formula. This, if I do this, I'll get sex. That's completely backwards, but that's the message that we get, right? The formula needs to be, in my book, not to bring on my book, but in my book, I talk about how counterproductive it is to chase pussy. What you need to be doing is chasing excellence. And that doesn't stop when you get married. Like, if you want your woman to still be intrigued with you, continue chasing excellence. Don't chase the other part of it. And the other part of it will follow. But as far as Jordan Peterson's advice, I've been looking at him for a while too, and I'm sort of, I'm the local YMC boxing coach talking about Floyd Mayweather, so take it with a grain of salt. But it seems to me that the advice that he's giving is not incorrect, but maybe incomplete. And Jordan Peterson is a profoundly inquisitive man. And I wonder, as he debates and he argues these things more and more, and he goes out and he does these interviews and his ideas are challenged and he's looking at relationships, that maybe he will become a little more complete in his advice and make this distinction between negotiating and negotiating desire, for example. So we'll keep an eye on him and see what happens.
Yeah, the guy does update his belief system. We saw him make a broad statement disparaging the guys that are declared as MGTOW. In the MGTOW community, he called them weasels at one point, and then he apologized after that, shortly thereafter, yeah. Although I don't know how genuine the apology was, because he wasn't looking at the camera very much when he was apologizing. But he does tend to update his belief system. So, I'm hoping that he continues to do that, do the work that he does, but he doesn't have a great deal of experience, or doesn't seem to project that he has a great deal of experience when it comes to helping men understand. I haven't read his book yet, so I'll be doing a book review on his book once I get my hands on it. I go through it because I tend to do that a lot. I did yours on the channel as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. I want to thank you for your time. We've gone on for 20 minutes. I know you're a busy guy. So guys, if you want to get more information on Sean Smith or his book, I'll link it below. It's in the description, along with the other recommended reading that I have for all men. As you mentioned, if you're interested in women and you want to get on the sexual marketplace, you want to vet them correctly so you don't make your life a nightmare. There is nothing, and I'll say this again, that will make your life more of a nightmare than choosing to partner up and marry with and have children with the wrong woman. So, thanks, Sean.
You bet.